All right. The fight is live. The weigh-in just happened, and right now, as you see, David Benavidez and Morrell, not too great of friends, but the fact of the matter is, we wanted to see a great fight, and I think today with the weigh-in, these guys both weighed in on point. They look sharp. Both of them look strong. I think without any doubt that this will be an absolute barn burner. And what we're going to do is talk about the actual ins and outs of this fight and what will this fight end up playing out to be based on the data that we see here at the weigh-in, because a lot of that I don't call the fight before the fight, but after I see the weigh-in, I could speculate more on what's actually going to happen based on being in over 60 training camps myself and having the wherewithal to understand the most minute details in this camp. And I'm going to tell you exactly what I saw in Morrell and in David Benavidez. So thanks again for taking the time to watch us over here. This is the Fight Show, and my name is Eric A. Bradley, aka Coach, that is. And when I'm doing my fight show, what we do is break the fight world down round by round, aka when it times to get it going, when you see guys like David Benavidez, as we dive deeper into just the little things. What I did see at the beginning phases, and some of you are very casual, and a lot of you are diehard. And the diehard fans understand a lot more about the energy of a fighter. David Benavidez does not like this guy, and David Morrell does not like that. He doesn't have David Benavidez's spot. But we're gonna go deeper in the conversation because this fight reminds me of a fight that went on a couple of nearly 2 decades ago. This fight featured a very large heavyweight champion who had great boxing skills and a magnificent teacher as a trainer. But lo and behold, the opposition was also a big heavyweight puncher, but he was a southpaw and he was a club fighter. When you look at the skills, the first thing that you think of is the best skills in boxing win. But for those of us who have been in the gyms for decades on end, know that skills has absolutely nothing to do with it when it comes down to styles, because that's what makes a fight. And when you put a southpaw that can punch up against anybody, no, it does not matter the skill set. Floyd Mayweather is going down as one of the greatest defensive fighters in history. And when he got in the ring with Zav Judah, he but all lost every round up to the fourth round, right? So that confirms my point. Skills does not always pay bills. Now that they pay off, but when a guy can punch you and he's in an awkward stance, and you see this guy and he's bringing you smoke, you got to remember one thing when you're talking about this boxing. All it takes is one punch that you don't see from an awkward angle, and you don't get repetitions with guys who can fight at that level that are southpaws with power that have absolutely nothing to lose. And Corey Sanders, when he fought Vladimir Klitschko, had absolutely nothing to lose. And what did he do? He went in there and he showed that this guy doesn't have a chin, and he bust him up and was out of there in 2 rounds. So you tell me, do you think Vegas got it right that night? I'm gonna tell you for sure. No, they didn't. Because one thing that you got to realize about boxing, everybody from the great Teddy Atlas to the other people who come on board who just spew their idealizations, their little perceptions and their hypotheses about this fight game, but no one knows more about that fight than the trainer who's in that corner telling the fighter anything he needs to hear in order to win that fight. And that's what you see a lot of times. The trainer just wants to keep a job. So he's acting more like a promoter than an actual trainer. See, this is where we go into the individualism of developing your life and your career in the training field or as a fighter, so that if one piece is removed, you don't even miss that bus. And I always make it clear, I have always been in control of my brand. I was never in fear of a fighter saying bye. I never had to. For one, I was under the tutelage for such a long time. But then when I pulled myself out, I realized I was my own brand. So even great coaches reached out for me to come because they know I wasn't in control by a fighter. You can't get calls as a trainer to come to do camps because most trainers are tied to a fighter. And why? Because the fighter who's finally made it to the back and kind of pay the trainer, and the trainer relies on it. So therefore, he bites his tongue at times. And it's just like when you talk about college football. You see, the college football, in college football, the coach is the king. Okay? You work for the coach. But in pro football, the players make more than the coach. So they're the boss. And that's one of the main reasons I tell all of the amateur coaches, you got to remember one thing. You're funding everything as an amateur coach. But when you go with that fighter to the pro ranks, if he takes you, he's your boss. All of that turns around, and everything you say to him as an amateur, they remember. And everything you do as an amateur, they remember. And there's a more likelihood that that fighter is going to fire you anyway. So you got to think about building your brand. So when I think about these fighters, the coaches will tell you whatever you want to hear. They'll tell the reporters whatever they need to hear from that trainer. And I tell people all the time, I can tell you when a trainer's about to lose his job, when it's coming. I mean, I'm even at the precipice of his height and career. I said it last year. I did a whole video and it's still online. And I said that Coach DJ, Coach James, had all of those stablemates, all of those fighters. And I said, once that third piece came, I said, now what's going to happen is when one loses and it's coming, it's going to be a domino effect. I was saying it, and I like to do it online. And no knock on Coach James. He's very super coach of the year multiple times. But the game plays and operates a certain way. And just remember, when I'm talking about this fight in the back in the days with Corey Sanders versus Klitschko, that mirrors this fight that's coming up this weekend. Now, I'm not saying David Benavidez is going to get clipped by this guy, but skills did not necessarily pay the bills. Everyone talks that talk before the fight. The trainers, they talk that talk before the fight. But the thing that I always like to point to is the shit that nobody's talking about, right? And that's why I'm on an entirely different conversation when you come to my channel, when we're talking about the boxing game. I'm talking about the game in its entirety, and everybody else is talking about specks of it. But what I'm talking about is the actual sport of boxing, and that's a 360-degree circumference. It's business, it's politics, and it's actual livelihood, the way you live your lifestyle. So, do you surround yourself with people that are here because they got a chance to get with you, and they can kind of boost their lives up? Yeah, that's most of it, unless it's family and they still out for the same thing. These people, do you have people around you that actually know the red tape of a game, the politics? Or do you understand that this game is more than about skills, because the fighter will soon be a commodity, and a commodity isn't a good thing. It sounds like it's a good thing. A commodity, you mean like if I go to the beach and grab a handful of sand, you're one of those pieces of sand. That means you're one of the exact same replica of all of the other pieces of sand that it is. And I told my fighters this years ago. I said, you got to remember, you're just a commodity. No matter how good you think you are, one day it'll be somebody else. There was a time that there was this young brass kid, and this boy had skills. I mean, float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. Your eyes can't hit, your hands can't hit what your eyes can't see. Rumble, young man, rumble. 1964, straight out of the Olympics, the greatest, the most brash young athlete in the history of boxing. Flash, flurries, footwork, hand skills, handsome, champion, Muhammad Ali, Cassius Clay. You never saw the end coming when that kid was in his prime. And lo and behold, not once, not twice, not even 3 times in history has the greatest fighter vanished from existence. So not only are you going to deteriorate, but you will exit the game. So that is something you must always think about. And one of the things that we specialize in our conversations, this is why I tell guys like David Benavidez, build your brand. Clarissa Shield is getting her movie deals and opportunities. And all we tell everybody is build your brand. And what is your brand? Your brand is you not doing the thing you do. That's when you got a brand secure. When you take your gloves off, or you take your cleats off, or when you take your golf clubs out of your hand, and that 2 years pass that you had that money and it's gone, what do you have then? If you're nothing outside of what you did, you don't have a brand. You got to have the ground beneath your feet. You got to understand how this game works. So myself is the key is for me is I want to see these guys understand boxing is 360 degrees, but everybody only sees 1/10 of this game. Punching each other. Fight like a Mexican. Fight in the Philly shell. Fight in the peekaboo. Fight, fight, fight. I don't remember anybody after the 25-year mark still been in the game of boxing doing that shit, right? But I do know that people who invest their times, invest their wisdom, and bringing people in that can actually further them along and them getting educated on how to operate their careers is a pretty big deal. And that's the key that I had to find the lane in this sport that no one was touching, and nobody wants to touch it. And I want the people to see that's why when I see a fight, I see a matchup, I see more than most people when they're talking about the fight. Because at the end of the day, you really can't pick the fight because you don't know what else is going on in that fighter's life. And a lot of times, a fighter will be convinced not to bring his A game, and I'll leave it at that. And sometimes there are other things that are incentivizing a fighter to win when you go back to Buster Douglas versus Mike Tyson. There's this other spirit that he brought into the ring. There are so many other denominators inside of boxing that don't relate a skill. And that's what I do. I open you guys' eyes to those things so that when you go into these channels and you're just listening to these guys just talking about left hooks and southpaws, bending your knees and good technique and who he fought. And I'm looking at this thing from a limousine because the limousine's on the way to the airport and the airport's on the way in the air. And I'm looking down at the entire game, 360 degrees, the politics of the game, the business of the game, the brand building of the game, the understanding of the skill set. See, what we had to do is create a company that had a vertical and brought all of those components to it. And so when I look at these fighters, I see more than just what they have to do on the night of the fight, because I see so many holes on the outside of that ring that the fighters are dealing with. No one knows Morrell. Good fighter, great pedigree, super duper power, very smooth with his boxing, crisp and clean, no caffeine. Absolutely no qualms. The only thing I want these guys to pay attention to, as well as winning fights and titles, is, are you winning titles outside of that ring? One way to do that is take a page out of the book of people like Muhammad Ali, where during his time where he could not fight, he was going around the college campuses, being in circles and speaking to the young. And when you can talk to a different generation of fighters, I mean, a different generation of people that don't look like you, their day to day isn't like you, they're not running 10 miles to fight a 200-pound man. They're doing a totally different thing. They're learning how to run the earth. They're understanding how to operate in the scale in the world of that's filled with AI. You need to be building relationships like that. And those kind of people that show up when it's time for you to fight. Those are the kind of people that'll show up and pay for your pay-per-view. And those are the same kind of people that'll come up under you and help build you up in certain ways, in certain areas that you're weak in. And so therefore, now you build more of a brand because people come up under you that don't look like you, don't act like you, are not your creed, are not your color, and are not from the background that you are from. They bring an entirely different skill set, the one that you don't have, and the one that why 97% of our fighters retire and don't have the real pots that they should be pissing in, because they did not set themselves up for the long journey. And that's what we want to do. We want to turn that around and we want to look at the entire fight. So I can't help myself. And when I look at this fight, I'm looking at everything. I'm looking at this fight means nothing to channel, to ABC, to CBS, to NBC. This fight means nothing to that. But in our boxing world, when this small little bubble, it's everything. It's all we're talking about. Matchups. But here, when you start bringing this to reality, I have a circle of people that I'm around that have no idea that it's a fight going on. And so that's what we have to fix, because the more people understand what's going on in your industry, the better you will be. The more leverage and conversations that the coaches will be able to have and not be fearful of their jobs, because they will be building their personal brands. And that's the only reason right now that we're launching our own thing, Launch Pro. So you can launch your own brand in 3 damn days, because we can't keep doing this. I look at Andre Ward and I'm just so proud of the way he's operating. I reshare all of the content that he's putting out because he's doing something for the sport. He's showing you by example. He's still figuring it out. His conversation with Clarissa and his conversation with Layla Ali, he was honest. He was like, hey, I'm trying to manipulate my way, see bigger, 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 because being on All the Smoke Fight, where some of those hosts are NBA stars, he's being exposed to other things outside of boxing. There's an entire planet with 8 billion people, and there's probably 1.5 million actually active athletes in the sport. That's not even if all of us vanished tomorrow, it wouldn't even leave a dent on the planet. That's how minute it is. And we have to be aware that we have to be those second set of eyes for our athletes that are coming up under you guys as coaches. So this conversation, like I said, I wanted to cover this weigh-in. They both came in at 174.2 pounds. They're both in shape, and they're going to fight. But I can't not see what they have not done yet. Benavidez had to move to Miami to get more recognition. Now he's more star-studded. You understand how much more opportunity comes because of that? He's being followed by cameras every day of the week. Conversations, more shows, more consistent, opportunities and conversations and podcasts and all of those things. And that's great. But man, those are all boxing shows. So we have to look at the thing that when he decides to exit the game, because the game is pissing on opportunities, he has to go up and wait to find fights. He can't fight who he wants to fight. People should have the opportunity to do other things and to tap into other ventures and stuff. And maybe he just gets a portfolio, with 100 million cold hard cash in it from stocks, his bonds, investments, and things like that. That's growing money out of the earth for him. He don't have to think about what he needs to do in the ring, because we have to really get real with this thing, bruh. You all came in to fight to get paid so you can change the direction of your family and your circumstances. That's the bottom line. I know all of you cats. You get it? I know. We got an influx of 1.2 million messages and interactions and comments every month. So I know what I'm dealing with out there, right? Mentor so many people through in our lineage. I've seen great fighters. Like some of them who just didn't have the belt, just lost recently, or, immediately still already didn't have money. Because the problem that I'm seeing all the time and have been for decades is these guys are getting advanced money before they get paid. So when it's time to get paid on fight night, they're getting a fraction of their check because they spent it all before they got to the fight. Wanting to floss, hotels, expensive jewelry, taking all these different extravagant women out and doing all of this high time stuff. So, excuse me for being Uncle E, but I am uncle for boxing. And it's one of my biggest things not to just look at it and talk down on one minute piece of conversation. The weigh-in, man, it's more going on about this fight than a weigh-in that I can't unsee. And so I just wanted to give you guys a little conversation about the real entire sport of boxing, because it's 360 degrees while you've been looking at it in a 3-degree lens. And so we just want you to pivot and open up your eyes and start thinking about a little bit more than just what's happening in a training camp and ring, and realize what's not happening in their lives and why they have to continue to grind and try to chase fights and try to chase fighters and try to find fights and doing exhibitions and fights after the careers to stimulate the economy around them. Yo, this is not a game. So, I always been a kind of serious dude when it came down to things, and I'm a lot different than most people that I get around. That's why I have a minute circle of people that are different from pretty much everybody else that I'm around as well. Because the bottom line is we who are in this position have to help bring the game to another level. So what I see tomorrow night, and I do owe you guys a conversation about this. What I do see tomorrow night is I see a guy who's had less than 12 fights fighting a guy who's been fighting real fights. Caleb Plant can fight. Anthony Durrell can fight. Benavidez has been in the ring with some killers, like real killers in the ring. Like nothing prepares you for a 12-round fight on championship night, like being in the ring in a 12-round fight on championship night. And I just think there's not enough experience, but I do think there's a lot of luck that can come into play. And when I watched the weigh-in today, Morrell looks very, very confident, very, very strong. So tomorrow, right before the fight, we're going to call the fight tomorrow night. So if you are not going to tune into the fight, and even if you are going to tune into the fight and you want to hear a live broadcast, that's what I'm going to do for the sport of boxing. And right before the fight, I will give you my blueprint of a strategy for the actual prediction. And I had one of our other coaches who came on, but we had some audio problems. It didn't really come out clear enough, but I wanted to share. And hopefully we can get a couple of segments on kind of what it's like to hear multiple coaches who actually coach boxing and stuff. So we want you guys to tune in, and without any further ado, we're going to make sure that you guys have the time of your life. The best called fight that I've ever heard was me calling the Ryan Garcia versus Devin Haney fight. I can play that back more than I want to play any other commentation on any fight in history. And I love boxing and I love hearing good commentating. But boy, did I slice that thing up. I did the damn thing. And we're going to do that tomorrow again, because I just feel like we need to donate something to the sport of boxing. And while I donate that, I'm going to make sure that I give you guys something to walk away with that's bigger than the sport. From a 3-degree lens, I'm going to give you a 360-degree point of view in this. And for those of you who are watching and you've been inspired to box, I want you to know that you will have the opportunity to not just bounce around and try to learn little spot boxing, because the thing about it is you're becoming part of the problem. You'll now have a place that you can actually go starting this weekend to learn the actual process of developing in boxing. And that place, my friend, is at K2 Boxing and Jiu-Jitsu on Instagram, launching the subscription this weekend. The actual skills and development, and you're going to be taught by a teacher. And so with that being said, if you're looking to learn how to do some boxing, go over to K2 Boxing and Jiu-Jitsu on Instagram and follow them, subscribe, because it's about to go down. The sport of boxing is going up, and we're going to feed it, and we're going to need your support. So support us, and we'll make sure that you get the kind of information that will help change your complexity and your vision and your idealization about boxing. And if you're aspired to do it, damn, you're going to be on fire to do it now, because now we're going to give you the tools. That's all I got. My name is Eric A. Bradley, coach, that is, and we teach boxing, the business of boxing, that is. Peace.